Welcome to Wine Soundtrack South Africa. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Marina Kalo, and today I'm sitting with David Nieuwoudt from Cederberg Wines. David, welcome to our podcast today. Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
I'm David Nieuwoudt from the beautiful Cederberg Mountains, and this is probably the most uniquely situated wine estate in South Africa. So it's north of Cape Town, about 240 kilometers, and then you take a turn off on a gravel road and you climb up into these beautiful mountains, over 2 mountain passes, till basically up in the Cederberg Wilderness region. And then we situated right basically in the middle of the Cederberg. So it's the highest lying vineyards in South Africa, and it's just an amazing spot.
It really is amazing. I had the fortune of visiting you with the rest of my team not so long ago, and it's an incredible landscape. There's these amazing rock structures, these red rock structures all over the show, and even some Bushman paintings not very far from the farm. So it really is a unique place in the South African wine landscape. What made you kind of start a winery in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, people still think we're absolutely crazy, but that's the beautiful part of it. So this land is in our family since 1893. So the first Nieuwoudts actually came up in the Cederberg Mountains in 1767. And then they've moved from one property, start a new one. And so my grandfather, they farmed with tobacco and sheep for about 70 years. Quite interesting. And then in the 50s, they start planting the first apples and pears, more fruit, because it's 1,100 meters above sea level. So high location, amazing continental climate. So basically it was very favorable for fruit. And then in 72, my grandfather planted the first wine grapes. So everybody thought, yes, this man is absolutely crazy, but with amazing success. So the focus was always predominantly on fruit production. And then I've studied viticulture and enology, came back in 1998, and then we decide basically to change everything 100% from fruit to vineyards. So in the beginning, I think we were also a little bit lucky. It was the right time to do it as well. But if you look at the advantages of Cederberg, it's high altitude, huge difference between day and night temperatures, up to about 22 degrees. So a hot day will reach, say, 32, 33 degrees even, but the nights even in summer will be down to 12 degrees again. That's one of the biggest advantages. And then the isolation. So it's completely surrounded by a big wilderness reserve. It's also a World Heritage Site, so there can never be any development up in Cederberg. And it's very isolated, so it's completely disease-free. People don't understand it, but if you see it and you've been there, it looked like Arizona at some spots, and then it looked like complete flat lands again with amazing soil types and slopes. So we don't spray for basically the biggest wine disease in the world or in South Africa, downy mildew. It don't occur up in Cederberg, and that's just because of isolation and extreme winter temperatures. So this spot is amazing for wine growing, and it's completely virus-free.
It really is unique in that light. I mean, downy mildew, as you said, it really is a big problem here in South Africa, but also around other parts. And to not have that headache is certainly quite a relief, no doubt. So how many vineyards, how many hectares do you have under vine, and what does that add to in terms of annual production?
So we're busy with a massive replanting. So obviously the best technology that we've used in 1998 when we've started the replanting focus from fruit back to vineyards. And if you look at technology today, so it's basically, say, 24 years later, and we're busy with 100% replanting of Cederberg. People think I'm absolutely crazy to pull out those beautiful Tiende Hoog Shiraz vineyards with that got a very nice reputation already. But we've learned so much because it's relatively new. So big investment in drainage, new technology on soil mapping is really designed because we've learned a lot in 24 years. So it's really to what can we do to produce that 3% better wine. So we've got 85 hectares of high potential soil. So it's quite a big property. It's 5,500 hectares in size. Probably the biggest contributor to conservation in the championship status of wines of South Africa. But we just farm on 85 hectares. So we've got about 74 hectares under production now. So in the order of 650 to 750 tons per year.
And then what kind of wines do you produce?
We produce exceptional stuff. No, the beauty of that is the main focus of Cederberg, and it's always that you plant what's the best for the area, the best for the site. I don't produce style-specific wines. We really move. That's part of the massive replanting, is really site-specific wine. So the main focus is on Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin on the white side. We're the only successful continental Sauvignon Blanc, in my opinion. It's a Cederberg Sauvignon. It's quite known. It's a very specific style, but it got the sense of place again. Chenin, again, it's the only probably cool climate Chenin in South Africa. Very specific style, very clean cut, fresh and alive. And then we've got a very unique varietal called Boeketraube. So it died out completely around the world. It's the oldest man-made crossing on the planet, done in 1864 in Franconia. And it came via Alsace to South Africa. And then they've planted more in the warmer regions because it's very sensitive to downy mildew. So because we haven't got any downy mildew up in Cederberg, we can still farm very successfully with this varietal, and we want to keep it alive. So it's a muscat varietal. It's got this beautiful muscat, floral, peachy, apricot nose, but beautiful balance between sugar and acidity. So that's a focus on whites, and then on reds, late ripening reds. So we've got the advantage of long hanging time. We pick the latest in South Africa due to the elevation. So Shiraz, much more cooler climate Shiraz. It ripens in a much cooler period in the year as well. And then on Cabernet, we pick like when all the winemakers, if they come back from holiday, then we start pick Cabernet. But the beauty of that is, again, the grapes are really physiological ripe, and that's the beauty of them.
No, I think that adds to not only your story, but certainly the uniqueness of your wine. And I think anyone who has tasted Cederberg wines can really attest to the fact that they really are so different, so unique in a good way, of course, but speaking to that unique terroir, which is so wonderful. So South Africans are very familiar with Cederberg's wines. It's a well-known brand here. But internationally, where are your markets?
I think we're quite successful. So a big market for us is the US at this stage. Traditional markets like UK still doing exceptionally well. We see the world as clusters. So Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands as a cluster where we've got quite a strong presence, I think. Then Scandinavia, more a combination of obvious Sweden, Denmark and Norway. Then the east is predominantly Hong Kong, Singapore, a little bit of Indonesia as a cluster. We've just started with the first wines to Australia with some nice success, I think more specifically with Sauvignon and Shiraz in a different style. Yeah, that's pretty much, but then smaller pockets, obviously like Switzerland and all over, but the main hubs is UK, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Sweden, US.
And then talking about you, so you grew up on this farm and your father planted the first vineyards, but did you have a moment where you kind of maybe tasted wine and thought, wow, this stuff is interesting?
Yes, I've started at a very young age. It was always amazing on Sundays on the farm when so my father and his brother and their dad, the three of them, they were in the business, so it's always the Sunday, and I was always the pourer at a very young age of, say, from 6-7 years. So I've tasted a lot of wine in my life as well. Yeah, but I just love the farming. I love the viticultural part of wine specifically, and just to grow wines in such a unique area is amazing. So basically what you learn in theory and in Stellenbosch or at college or university, this is what we've got up in Cederberg. It's a lot of different soil types, from old ancient shales, sandstone, coffee clip. So the whole property is divided like basically in 3 hubs with 3 different main soil types, and then with different aspects. And a lot of our biggest cooling effect is wind up in Cederberg, because from the Atlantic quite a lot of air movement, and it's just a phenomenal spot to grow vineyards. But I love the viticultural aspect, so it started there, and then obvious from there it developed more into more winemaking.
Okay. So I know you've travelled the world fairly extensively, just exploring and travel and seeing what's out there. Which part of the world would you say the people drink the best wines? Where in the world do you think they're really spoilt?
The best is a very relative concept. Again, what's the best wine? So if you take that out of where they drink the most exciting wines, probably it's more interesting, because best can be very different ways. So I think specifically the US, they're very exposed to wine. So I just came back from a 3-week trip in the US, and it's amazing that you can get everything from the world, basically, in the United States. So that's quite an interesting area. I think then obvious UK specifically. I think, again, they're very exposed because they not produce that much wine. But you can find the most amazing wines in the UK from all over in the world. I travel a lot. I'm probably the guy that drives the most in South Africa. I still do normally about 100,000 kilometers a year. It's down to about 80,000 now. But that's just in my own car. I think exciting areas in the world is South America specifically. I think there's very exciting things coming out of South America. We're quite involved with that Longa V brand, where they really, again, site-specific wines, own identity. It's also interesting to see in South Africa as well. There's some amazing wines coming from South Africa these days. It's really pushing the envelope a little bit, and not just produce a little bit more wines that's a little bit more brave.
Yeah. And I think we have consumers that are a lot more open to trying new wines, new styles, different things than they were even just 10, 20 years ago.
No, big time. There's definitely a much younger wine consumer today, and it's quite important, I think, for wineries as well, traditional wineries, because we always chat about the new kids on the block, the new things. But we must remember we've got an industry that's more than 350 years in age, and it's also the innovation within the older wineries. And I think that's quite important these days, that we keep track with consumers. We normally produce wines. If I was in the cellar, they will say, but we love this wine. And say, this is what we as winemakers love, but can a consumer drink it? And that's the important part as well. It's important that older wineries, that they also adapt with time. It's a younger generation wine drinker. They look for different vibe in wine, different style. I can just see how I've changed my style, and I think we're quite innovative in that, and it's crucial. We must produce what people can drink, and that even if we got older brands, they must be relevant. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they must be exciting. Wines mustn't be boring. Come on, I love boring stuff.
Yeah, I think you need to evolve, you need to grow, and you need to kind of move with the times. And I think that's relevant on so many levels, whether you're making a wine, marketing it, the way you engage with your consumer is constantly changing. And we definitely see that happening all the time. So, Cederberg Wines, what is the most expensive bottle that you produce?
Sure. Because of our location, I think we relatively we're 240 kilometers from everything, and the last part is 44 kilometers of still gravel road over 2 mountain passes. So it's a relatively expensive winery to run operational wise. So our most expensive wine was basically the 5 generations range that was produced from the first 2 vineyards that my grandfather planted way back in 1972. The first plantings was a block of Chenin and Cabernet. So I've always produced 2 amazing single vineyard wines from these vineyards. It's now 2 new blocks. But they 2 wines with great international recognition. So it's the 5 generation Chenin and the Cabernet that I just love that wine. It's such a true expression again of site, of Cederberg, of soil, with physiological ripeness, with richness, balance. Yeah.
And tell me, of all the wines in your cellar, and I know this is a difficult question, it's asking which child is your favorite. However, what gives you the most joy or the most satisfaction when you're working with it, or just when you think of that particular wine, that it just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside?
Yeah, it's again that thing where people specifically criticize Sauvignon Blanc. It's as simple as that. If you're not in a Sauvignon Blanc area, don't criticize it But the attention to detail to produce amazing Sauvignon Blanc is people don't understand the beauty. It's everything that you put in, you get out in that varietal. So it's probably not the most exciting varietal to work with, but the different components that you can build, because it's such an aromatic varietal. And with clever winemaking, you can produce some amazing Sauvignon Blancs. So that's a varietal that express on the white side always the best in soil, in wind direction. It's quite and in timing. You must be quite smart with that varietal. Shiraz, the other hand, is probably the most interesting one for me to work with. From, again, the different flavor profiles. How do you really build a multidimensional wine to put one wine together? So I think that's the one that probably gives me the most energy and is the most exciting on the reds.
It is interesting that you say that. On both fronts, on the Sauvignon Blanc as well as the Shiraz, I think you can do so much with it, and you can really make it your own, and to just leave your own little mark on the wine. Tell me, what's your opinion on wine critics, wine scores, competitions? Where do you think they should be placed?
I don't want to be controversial in that, but that's just personal opinion. So obvious when I was always also a little bit younger, and it was still very relevant to be recognized. And I think personally we need to compete on a much more international level in South Africa. I think we start competing a little bit against ourselves these days. We must really be able to compete in a new world, in the southern hemisphere, with real substance. So wine scores is not that important to us anymore. I think it's more to build a real experience, a real unique, the spot that we've got. We must sell that, and we must decide, in a sense. I think the quality levels are absolutely up there, and stick to your guns and create our own identity. I think we mustn't always rely on what other people rate the wine to say it's spectacular, and build a strong, through strong communication, real true communication, build a loyal brand. I think that's more important. So we compete in a few more international competitions these days. That's I think much more relevant for South Africa, for a brand as well. If we want to build this industry, we need to build it globally. We need to be present on International Wine Spiritus at the Cantor World Wine Awards, where you really compete with other people. I think that's the crucial part going forward for us.
I must agree, and I also think that more and more South African producers are starting to recognize their self-worth and starting to realize that they can stand proudly next to any producer from anywhere in the world with the quality of wine that we produce here in South Africa. But it's having that self-belief that's so important.
And South Africa is the most exciting wine country at this stage in the world. So it's. I think we're in a very fortunate position as well. I love that laugh on your face, but that's the reality. So it's not. We must be out there, and we must show this amazing, diverse country in sites. In the old days, it was obvious, very specific with areas, and if you just look at, you know it. There's such amazing, interesting small locations with own identities. And luckily we start showing this to the world, and they start to recognize it, and we build their own identity and exciting wines. It's not boring to be a winemaker in South Africa these days. No. Then you're on the wrong planet.
Absolutely. I really agree with everything you've just said. I think that self-belief in what we do, and now is the time. I think we've kind of been paddling, kind of trying to catch that wave, and that wave is now here. Now it's time to stand up and ride it. And ironically, I mention this because I was at a launch last night, and there were a couple of people at the table who were going to be attending the Vintner Surf Classic this weekend, which is happening. It's just for the listeners, it's a very exciting surf event that takes place between a whole bunch of our South African winemakers, and there's a women's category, which is awesome, and I believe it's growing, and there's a lot of surfing, but I think there's quite a lot of wine drinking that goes with it, and just a lot of fun and sports. So it's great knowing that these kinds of things happen. But for me, I think the point was, this wave is there, and now we need to stand up and surf this wave, because the world is really paying attention to what we're doing here.
Yeah, and so it's creating own identity. Don't just follow what other people, what they are doing. And that's the beautiful part. We start really to produce South African wine that we can lift that flag, and we compete on an amazing level at this stage internationally, and we will see much more of this. Yeah, I think South Africa as a category is becoming very exciting, and the innovation is unreal. But then on the other hand, it's also happening in other countries. So.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. So you're basically in the middle of nowhere, and I've been there. The stars are fantastic, and there's actually a place where you can go and stargaze from with big telescopes. It really is fantastic. However, you're on the farm, minding your business, making your wine, and a spaceship lands. Out of the spaceships comes a whole bunch of aliens, and they've traveled so far from their galaxy, they are very thirsty. What do you give them to drink?
So Dark Tower, so Idris Elba and Matthew O'Connelly, they've actually landed there on the farm with their spaceship in the movie. And we've got a beautiful observatory on the farm, and the nice part of that is, well, you mentioned it, we're busy with a very exciting project on the farm with the International Space Station. It's really so we want to private observatory with 6 others in the world to link to the space station, to really absorb everybody's always looking to outer space, but nobody that middle section. It's amazing, these new things that's happening. So yeah, we're quite busy with these things. But if they really arrive there and we must drink something, I will definitely do a good South African braai for them with good Karoo lamb, and we will have a lot of Cederberg Shiraz. I never drink Cederberg, by the way. So so that's the other thing. I always say over weekends we treat ourselves, but I drink a lot of other wine, so it's.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Okay. Do you have any good luck rituals when harvest is about to start? Something that you do with your team, perhaps?
Yeah, we've got every year a blessing of the harvest with all the workers. So it's amazing. It's our own community. So we've got 25 permanent families living on the property. So we've got a workforce of about 85 people. It's family run, and they like family as well. So some of them are there for 4 generations as well. So we've got a big blessing after harvest, and then obvious after harvest we've always got a good oes-af, as they call it in South Africa, when you finish picking, a good braai for them.
That's awesome. And then tell me, when you're not working, what do you do in your free time?
I plan my holidays, although I don't do. I know. My free time is, I haven't got much of it, but I always say choose a job that you like and you will never work a single day in your whole life. And really, the whole Cederberg is a big tourist destination. So on the farm, so we get a lot of tourists up in Cederberg, because all the big hiking trails of the Western Cape is basically on that property, as you know. So the Wolfberg Cracks, the Wolfberg Arch, the Maltese Cross, the Stadsel Caves, a lot of Bushman paintings, rock, old ancient art. So it's really to live in nature, as you know. So my closest neighbor is, I think, probably 7 or 9 kilometers from me. So we've got a lot of space up in Cederberg, and nature and outdoor is quite important to us as well. And I seriously love planning a good holiday. Huh?
Well, they say that the best thing to do once you've finished a holiday is to start planning the next one, so you've got something to look forward to. So I feel you.
I've already done that one.
Where are you going next?
I don't know yet. I've got a few options. I must say I love Tasmania. I went to do a tasting on Tasmania, and I've started looking a little bit at, because it's also something different, and how can you bring something back to South Africa and in the whole wine scene as well. It will be quite an interesting one.
Yeah, I think so. I've never tasted Tasmanian wines before. What are they like?
I've got a good clue, but I haven't tried them that much. Actually, interesting, there's 1 or 2 South African winemakers in Tasmania, and quite like in the more upper end of the spectrum. So amazing champagnes or sparkling wines, very clean cut whites. But yeah, it's just to really research what they're doing. It's becoming quite internationally, you start seeing them a little bit more. Yeah, I just want to do an amazing tasting for the Cape Winemakers Guild, probably on Tasmania, because it's something that we don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, actually. So tell me, are you a supporter of any sporting teams, sporting individuals, I don't know, golfers, Formula One, tennis?
Yeah, I love, obviously I love sport. And at this stage, in this specific week, obvious, with the whole rugby scene, it's, I'll still remember way back at the Fine Wine Challenge in Sydney 3 years ago, when this Aussie guy told us that the Black Boys will crush the Brits in the rugby champion or World Cup. So last week we've obviously won the All Blacks, but we didn't need to say much about that. So it's actually one of the biggest rugby games this coming weekend in South Africa. It's at Ellis Park, so the biggest stadium, 85,000 spectators, I think, or attendance. And yeah, that will be like a Rugby World Cup final. So I think at this stage, South African rugby is at a very good state. I love cricket, so we struggle a little bit, but I think overall we're a great sport nation as well. So between rugby and cricket, I think that's more my type of sport.
So let's say next year is 2023. It's a World Cup, Rugby World Cup in France, I believe. If the Springboks win again, which wine would you send to the team to congratulate them? Which of your wines?
It's very interesting. So Jacques Nieuwoudt, the coach of the Springbok team, is a fanatic fan of Cederberg Aanhoede Chenin. So I think it's our basic wine in the range, but such a wine with it's one of the most all-rounder wines. So I think the team they've tasted some good Chenin overall.
That's good to know. Maybe that's why they play so well, hey? Okay, so what would you consider to be some of the best advice you've ever received as a person?
Sure, you put me a little bit on the spot here. The best advice is, I've got a big philosophy of just do everything 3% better than your competitor. It's not rocket science, specifically in wine and farming, and so we're busy with this. It's really a big replanting of our vineyards, and my father asked me, so David, so with all this effort over a 15-year period, will we produce that much better wine? And say, 3%. And he thought I'm absolutely crazy. He said, just continue. So it's all fine tuning, and in everything that you do, in communication, in vineyards, in people's relationships, just do everything 3% better. In winemaking is the best example of that. It's all those small little touches. At the end, it's 30%. Yeah.
That's very good, the 3% rule. I'm going to refer to that as that from now on. Do you think people will still be drinking wine in 2,000 years' time?
Sure, absolutely. It's the most noble drink on the planet, in my opinion. And it's a lifestyle product. So you can have it with any occasion, from 8 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock at night. And wine is a talking point, and that's why I'm so glad I'm not a apple farmer or a potato farmer. What do they chat about in the evening? It must be super boring. So I think the nice part is that we work in an industry where we can also celebrate what we do on a daily basis. No, for sure, I think the whole wine scene will definitely grow a lot. And we produce much more environmental friendly wines these days than 5-10 years ago. So obviously there's a big drive on more lower impact wines, not organic wines, but really wines with a more natural feel and edge and minimum intervention. So no, over 2,000 years we will definitely drink a lot of wine.
I like the sound of that. That sounds awesome. So you and your aliens have had a wonderful time eating Karoo lamb and drinking Cederberg Shiraz, that they've now invited you to join them in their spaceship, and they've asked you to bring along 3 bottles of wine, any 3 bottles of wine from anywhere in the world to take back to their alien king master. Which wines would you take with you?
Sure, I never travel with just 3 bottles of wine, by the way. I'm flying to Zimbabwe, of all the places, tomorrow, and half of my suitcase is already full of wine. So 3 bottles is very limited, but 3 beautiful wines that I tasted in the last months, basically, that I really enjoyed. It's not probably for the spaceship, because again, what do you really enjoy? I think smart wines, that's amazing. The Grey Wacky Wild Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, from Kevin Judd, what a smart wine. I had even Sari's Bellarius this week. That's just a spectacular wine. I'm much more a white wine drinker, by the way. I really love that. Yeah, and then I must find something very spectacular. A wine that I really love is probably Gigal's La Turque Shiraz. That one I'll not share. I'll drink it on my own for sure. But those 3 will be okay for one night in space. Yeah, but it's really 3 phenomenal wines that I've tasted. That's just on a different level at this stage.
Mm-hmm. David, before we finish off, I just want to play a very, very quick game with you. I'm going to give you 3 varieties, and I'd like you to pair each one with a song or a music artist or a genre that you think represents that variety. Just the first thing that pops up in your mind that you think, oh wow, that I can really see myself drinking along to this. So I'm going to start with a Sauvignon Blanc. It would be wrong not to.
To bring the excitement in Sauvignon, because again, people think it's a boring varietal. It's a phenomenal, exciting varietal, and there's energy in it. And so there's just one one artist that I can think of, and that's Pink. She's an energetic girl that just got the vibe for life, and that's why I drink Sauvignon Blanc. I just love the expression of it.
One of my favorites. Okay, let's go to Bukketraube.
Sure. Bukketraube. That's not more serious, but you obviously need a lot of nice spicy food, Thai. But it's also something with life. And how do you bring life into Bukketraube? You'll need somebody like a Bruce Springsteen, probably. Huh? It's like really punch it. Because again, a varietal like this, how do we bring life into wine? I think that's the beautiful part. It's sometimes we make wine so complicated. We must just enjoy it. Yeah, so I think a Bruce Springsteen with a beautiful cold Bukketraube on a hot day will be fantastic with spicy food.
Nice, very, very cool. And then lastly, what about, let's go with a Shiraz.
Shiraz. Yeah. Shiraz again is very multidimensional. So it must be... I struggle with that one, yeah? You must give me a little bit of clue. What would you go with Shiraz for interest? You're quite vibey as well, and you're young and energetic. And
So I would think of the spicy side of Shiraz. So something that's a little bit spicy, a little bit edgy. Maybe something that kind of gets you up onto your feet, gets you dancing, because Shiraz actually happens to be one of my favorite varietals as well. So personally, it would be something that's more along the rock genre. I would say, I'm also a little bit... To narrow it down, it is tricky.
That's why I've passed it back to you, that one.
Clever. What about something like a Green Day? Going back to my youth and teenage years, something from Green Day, I think would go really well with the spiciness of a Shiraz.
You've got the vibe today, which is amazing. No, but that's amazing about the varietal. It's sexy, it's alive, it's young, it's vibrant. I love what's amazing to work with Shiraz. It's the best expression of a site in winemaking. It rewards you the whole time. Yeah, so well done on that one, Marina.
I see what you did there. David, thank you so much for your time today. It really was a pleasure chatting to you and learning all about Cederberg and what you're doing there. Before we finish off, please will you just share with our listeners where they can find Cederberg online, social media, or get in touch to just learn more about your wines.
Yeah, so obviously you can get it if you go directly to our website, cederbergwine.com. You'll find we've got an amazing online platform. I think we're very active through our Cederberg Circle in communication. It's also celebrate a little bit what we do up in Cederberg, combine it with the whole sustainability, environment, and just to bring people closer to the brand. So you can find it online in South Africa, everywhere, to delivered. Like, I think we fine-tuned the online system quite nicely. And then in the world, so again, on our website, it's all our agents are listed there. And you can find it in multiple more independent wine merchants. So we're not that big in retail. And on Facebook and Instagram. So
thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack South Africa. For details and updates, visit our website winesoundtrack.com.